Hey guys, so with this video I wanted to make a reference that I can link people to and cover a lot of the answers that I end up facing when I argue with people online, as you do. You know, the typical questions and arguments people make, like how can there be Nazis in Ukraine if Zelensky is a Jew? And you know, the real reason, someone just told me the real reason why Russia is going to war is because Putin wants to bring back the Soviet Union, and ridiculous stuff like that. So I wanted to make this video just covering all of that. And I made the point, I just read a post that the problem with the propaganda war in the West is that while the people who are on Russia's side for the most part realize where the propaganda is happening, like we're not idiots as the other side tries to make us out to be. And when they point out that, wow, we haven't been taken in by this Russian propaganda, it really doesn't put you anywhere on a very high intellectual level, because most people that, you know, do support Russia actually see the propaganda as well. Like, there's very few people, you know, who buy into it, and most of Russian propaganda is quite lame. And the problem is that the same people are very easily taken in by Western propaganda. So they don't see that they are literally the same kind of people that, you know, will buy into the propaganda in Russia, like for the same intellectual level, but just on the opposite side, and they can't tell that. So they say the same stupid stuff that they've been fed, and they say it with such arrogance and this like holier than thou attitude that it gets really frustrating, because it's just so dumb. And but that's the issue in the West, is we don't realize that we are being lied to, and that's a really big problem, I think, for people, and people need to start realizing it and at least reach like a neutral state. And I posted an example of the only kind of argument that I would actually respect right now. And it's also not accurate completely. The guy is also trying to justify it, but this was from a mercenary that went to train troops to kill Russians in Ukraine, who's probably being called a Russian bot by someone out there right now, because he said that, Ukraine is a corrupt piece of shit nation with fucking horrible war criminals and Nazis there, but we're still on, you know, Team America, and we still gotta do our job, and we're still fighting on the right side of freedom. And he said this while he was, you know, drinking himself into a stupor, of course. So that's at least an argument I can kind of respect, because that's more of he realizes exactly what's happening, and then he still chooses the side of America. So I actually respect someone who says, you know, yeah, we invaded all these countries in the Middle East, but we want to get the oil. And, you know, that's more accurate. That's more to what the truth of the situation is, when someone's saying, yeah, we went to Afghanistan so women can thrive, and we attacked Iraq to give them freedom and stuff like that. Like, it's the same nonsense that you've been fed, and it's just silly. Anyway, but that's the point I wanted to make with the whole propaganda thing. So now let's get to some of the typical things that people say. Let's get to the Zelensky is a Jew, so there can't be Nazis in Ukraine. And to answer that, you simply have to think just a little bit geopolitically. So the fact that there's Nazis in Ukraine and that they are in really high positions, first of all, is very self-evident. Like, that's why you can tell, especially in the beginning of the war, they used to interview all these mayors of different cities, and there would be like a picture of Bandera, who's a Nazi, by the way, in the back, and they had to blur it out all the time. So what happened was, when it comes to the Nazis, is they actually, even though I'd say about 10%, if you look at like the elections and things like that, about 10% of the country is actually far right in Ukraine. They've put them in all these positions of power to spread their poison to people. And they have a lot of brainwashed people as well. They had those Nazi camps. And by the way, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to, you know, cut any clips into this video. What I'll do is, if anyone wants evidence of these things, either ask me here, and I'll slowly make links and I'll put them in the description. But there's documentaries before the current year showing, you know, Nazi camps with children and things like this, teaching them, you know, how to basically kill people, a bunch of swastikas and things like this. So they put themselves in these positions of power, and they were the best armed military at the time, and they were funded via people like Kolomoisky and Israeli and other billionaires as well, and Western billionaires. They were funded indirectly by them. Now, the reason why, a hardcore, by the way, Jewish nationalist guy like Kolomoisky of Israel would help out Nazis is because Nazis are killing Russians, and that is beneficial to Israel. That's simply said. Because who's the biggest enemy to Israel? Who's the biggest threat to Israel? It would be, in the Middle East, things like Hezbollah and, of course, Iran. And Iran funds all these kind of organizations like Hezbollah. Again, I'm not going to get into the moral and the reasons and all this kind of stuff specifically to the Middle East, which, like I said in the previous video, is a whole other clusterfuck, and that's another, I guess, position you can take. I kind of feel that maybe everyone should kind of get along there and, learn to live with themselves, and everybody has a legitimate beef, so to speak. Like, the countries did try to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, but since then, America, on the behest of Israel, did wipe a lot of other Arabic countries, off the face of the earth pretty much, and killed over 1 million people, I think is the estimate recently, of the countries that they invaded and the result of it. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and of course Iran was also on the chopping block. But Iran is a bit more powerful. They've got an actual army that Israel and America would have to face, and that is a problem. And one of their biggest allies, and a bigger ally, is Russia, becoming Russia, and also China to an extent now as well. And China, of course, is the enemy of America, so that is their kind of encouragement why they want to bleed Russia out. So all these geopolitical issues is why Zelensky, being Jewish, is totally irrelevant. And from the Nazi point of view, of course, is, well, you can actually listen to the Nazis actually tell you exactly what they feel about it. And they basically say that, yeah, he's pretty much irrelevant. He's actually a bit more of an annoyance, because he actually tried to pretend like he's an actual president. So that's what they say. And it's open, like they actually say this to people who listen to them. But of course, people in the West don't listen to them; they don't get this information. But they say that, yeah, he's annoying, but he's good that we have him there, because now whenever points to us and tells us that we're Nazis, we can say, well, what about Zelensky? He's a Jew. So maybe this is the argument that they make. And people have completely bought into it, and that's exactly what people do. But this is the reason why he's there. It's like he's exactly there to cover up that they are Nazis and they have these radical ideologies, and that's why you have the Azov battalion, which were terrorists, which held people prisoner in the Azovstal plant, and you have the Azovstal people who left the plant that is never shown in the West, interviewing and saying how they were held prisoners. You have these pieces of shit going around meeting the Pope, going to Israel, pretending they were some Israeli martyrs or something like this. It's all propaganda. It's all bullshit to get more weapons, to get more money from the West. Israel is happy to provide it. America is happy to provide it. And they'll overlook this for now until it starts to influence them. And the thing you got to know about Nazis as well, just in general, Nazis aren't above making deals and working with people they hate. They will use people they hate as long as they kind of have their own. What they want is their own ethno-state. That's their goal. So they will use Jews, they will use, Muslims and stuff to achieve this. They just don't like them. They can still not like them. And during World War II, by the way, that's what Hitler pretty much did when he came to Japan and Ukrainians. So if you read what opinion Hitler had of the Japanese, it wasn't very flattering, but he still kind of allied himself with them and used them. And the same with the Iranians, the same with the Ukrainians. Like, Hitler kind of saw them as subhuman filth, and the Ukrainians that lined up, that fought alongside with Hitler, they saw themselves as this on par, white ethnic race, and really Hitler kind of didn't think much of them. but that's the irony. And he still used them, but he still, even Jews. I think George Soros said he worked for the Nazis. Didn't he admit that he was working with the Nazis and stuff? Like, I don't know, is that accurate or not? But I think he pretty much did, or like as a kid or something, he helped them out. Anyway, so that's not beyond Nazis as well. So you got all these interests, and they work together, and that's basically that's why there's Nazis. And the actual evidence of Nazis being there is very self-evident. You can watch some of my other videos. I posted over there. Okay, so let's get to this question of why actually Russia went in. And I've been hearing some really silly questions, like really silly arguments, like Putin wants to restore the Soviet Union, and he went there for the resources and things like this. Now, look, Russia will take the resources while it's there, and there's a lot of different reasons. Like, when you go to war, you're not going to just look at one reason and that's all. And obviously just going there to get rid of Nazis or like supporting the ethnic Russians there, obviously that's not reason enough of itself why Russia would start this war, and people point this out. Of course it's not. On its own, it isn't the reason. Yes, there's definitely a stronger reason why, and my argument, my point of view is the reason is mostly geographical and comes down to the very realistic threat of NATO encroachment, and just the way that Ukraine, the position of Ukraine, the unfortunate position of Ukraine, I guess you can say, geographically, and of course the position and access of Russia to a warm water port from Crimea. Now, everything since the beginning of the war justified Russia's reasonings, basically. Every single thing that Ukraine has done. You know, they talked about attacking all those Russian colonies, Transnistria, and the other one as well, I can't remember the name, but they openly talked about taking those areas out, and all these threats they make, bombing of Russian territory. It showed exactly how easy it is because there's hardly any border between there's no natural defenses between the border of Ukraine and Russia's major cities. And I point this out in this other video geographically, that the way Moscow was designed, it was basically built smack in the middle of nothing. And the idea was you would defend the outskirts of the Russian Empire, which was Ukraine. You know, you got Belarus, which is the buffer from the north, but then you have this Ukraine over here, and it's a big issue when you have radicals taking over a country like that, radicals that see Russians as subhuman, and they go around calling Russians orcs, while they shout the national, you know, the Nazi slogan, Slava Ukraine, Geroyam Slava. So when you have radical terrorists, taking over the country on the behest and funded by America, that wants to see you destroyed as well, that wants to put pressure on you from being allies with, Iran and China and places like this, that's a massive threat. And people think like, oh, NATO isn't a threat to Russia, and like, what planet have you been living on? Did you not know this? All the countries, the NATO countries, have been invading and destroying, and all the the NGOs and all the Salva regime changes and all these things they've been doing. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna have to put everything in this video and explain it to you, which I probably won't, because it'll take way too long. But you really need to kind of educate yourself on exactly what your government, and I live in Australia, you have to really educate yourself on what your government has been involved with. I mean, if you want to talk about, countries that are corrupt and just total psychopaths, America's at the top. Like, there's very little competition, regardless of how bad you think Iran is, or Russia, or even China. And I'm not a big fan of China myself, like in terms of how they treat their citizens, but in terms of how they treat the rest of the world, China hasn't really invaded anybody or murdered millions of people. And people are quick to point out how China treats the Uyghurs supposedly, and I don't know, maybe it does treat them, a bit with a bit of disrespect, but million plus deaths in the Middle East, so it's hard to compete with America when it comes to killing Muslims. That's the way I see it. But anyway, so that's the situation. I think that the reason why Russia went in is because of the threat, because of NATO encroachment. Like I said, that was the biggest threat. Like geographically, they just could not allow Ukraine, and Ukraine. The Ukrainian regime, they said they're going to take Crimea, they want to bring nukes back. Merkel came out and said that the whole reason for the Minsk Accord, the peace deal that they supposedly struck, was to just let Ukraine build up the army so that they could eventually pose a bigger threat to Russia. So everything that Ukrainians done, everything that the West has done and shown, justifies Russia going in, and it actually... the mistake Russia really made is not going in way sooner, and I think that is why Russia is going to take this war probably all the way, and because they have to make sure that Ukraine is no longer a threat. They have to build a buffer, they have to secure Crimea. They can't let Ukraine and NATO build up its forces on its border again, because they know that sooner or later NATO is going to attack them. Basically, that's everything. All the evidence now has led to that eventually being the case, and trying to break up Russia in some way, trying to regime change and all these things. So that's the case. I mean, that's the reason. I don't see. I don't see more of an argument to say that like Putin wants to bring back the Soviet Union. Maybe there's some people like that. I mean, he said that he likes the Soviet Union, but that doesn't mean he's going to go to war just by himself. Like he's just one guy, by the way. Yes, he's this figurehead in Russia, and he's the one people put up in front of everybody, but really it's just not enough to just have one person. There's a lot of other interest in Russia, and a lot of those interests actually against Russia. They actually worship the dollar a bit more, which is a big issue. Why there's all this nepotism as well, because there are a lot of people that would be tempted, and there are a lot of critics of Russia that talk about the corruption, nepotism, and all these things that are a big issue in Russia, and that are affecting the war effort. Because it's very easy for people to basically be paid out by countries like America to do the bidding, and that's what happens a lot of the time. So it's very hard for countries that aren't as wealthy to go against countries like America and to go against the collective West. But the good thing is that it seems like a lot of countries have reached the point where they are less reliant on these sort of things, and they're starting to get a bit of self-esteem, and they're starting to really speak out against what's going on. And that's happening with India, countries like India, also South America and Africa. They're telling America where to go, which is great to see, because that is the accurate position. America has always been like trash. Like, not always. For the individuals, America has been a great beacon of freedom, and at some point it was on the good side of history. But that time has like left a long time ago, and even when it comes to individual freedom and certainly the kind of moral position they have taken on certain issues in that country, they are way like they've lost their mind. Basically, they've lost their way, and other countries have adopted the good parts of the American system, like the free market capitalism ideas, and they ran with it, and then they kept their own kind of cultural and what else, religious, whatever, morality, and all these cultural things, I guess. That's what I wanted to say. It's like the way they do things themselves, they kept those, and whatever your view on that is, whether you think that's not enough freedom for women, if you know what I'm talking about, or it's discrimination against gays or something like this, but you want to have tranny story time inside the schools. And I'm big on trannies. I like transvestite people, by the way, in my personal opinion. But I can see why cultures would not want to have that really, at least very open and acceptable in the country. And it does influence, the birth rate and all these kinds of things. So I can see why people would not want that. And I understand that. And certainly countries should be allowed to have their own point of view and set their own standards, and not have these standards, moral standards, and things shoved down their throat, which is what China and Russia doesn't want to do. They just want to have business deals. They want to do business. They don't want to tell countries how to live their lives. They don't want to, they don't want to invade other countries. Yes, I know there's Ukraine, but that, again, I listed the reasons why that needed to happen. But for the most part, they don't want to forcefully influence countries the way they do things beyond making deals, developing, building things like China has been doing all over the world, building, modernizing, which is great. So China's building up while America destroys, while America lies and looks after its own self-interest, and is ready to kill, murder, and do all kinds of nasty stuff to people to get away with it. I think I'll leave it at this. I'll see if there's any more questions that people might ask, because I only feel like I answered 2 so far, but maybe I touched upon certain other issues during this video that would have come up, and I certainly hope this will be enough of an answer for some people, at least to begin to question certain things that they've been told, and get them to that neutral state of thinking Ukraine is a piece of shit and country, but still maybe being on their side and still being on America's side. That's fair enough. I mean, if that's where you're at, but at least getting them to that state of realizing what the actual truth of the situation is, what is actually going on, and maybe still picking the position that I personally wouldn't pick, but at least they're coming from a place that's more based in reality, as opposed to just this fantasy that they've been fed by the propaganda that they've been told. So that's what I hope to achieve. So thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I didn't go off too many tangents and didn't do too much ranting, but ask me for any evidence of anything that I talked about and I will post links to it. Thank you guys, and all the best.